Good.
I don't have anybody, online, public on, so.
All right. So this evening, our task is reviewing some information that Isabel provided to us. Review draft goals and objectives. Yeah. All right. Jump right in. Do you want to, before we get into new business, do you want to give everybody an update on LD 1829, the issue that we were kind of waiting to see what happened? Hello.
Yeah. So I sent around a memo that gives a lot more detailed information than I'm going to be able to give in this conversation. Going back to our June meeting, we had some discussion around LD. Was it our June or end of May? Anyway, LD 1829, which was at the end of June signed by the governor, so is enacted. This is the sort of expansion of a 2022 law that is commonly still referred to as LD 2003, which, as many of you know, eliminated single-family zoning across the state, allowed for accessory dwelling units by right, removed some specific requirements that some towns had enacted for accessory dwelling units, and the like. LD 1829 has expanded upon that, sort of clarified some of the things that continued to be confusing for folks around LD 2003, and sort of reaffirmed, accessory dwelling units by right, up to 4 units by right on any lot within the designated growth area. And then most sort of, perhaps most impactful, this is always the one I struggle to word. It essentially put a cap on the minimum lot area requirement that you could allow. So currently, for example, in our medium density residential zoning districts, if you're on public sewer and water, you are allowed to have a 10,000 square foot minimum lot area. LD 1829 has said that if you are on public sewer and in a designated growth area, you're now allowed to have 5,000 square feet of minimum lot area. So essentially carving our existing minimum lot area standards in half in most of the MDR, and in a third for the remainder of our medium density residential zoning district, which if you are in that district but off public sewer, you're allowed 15,000 square feet. So that has been enacted. There is sort of a pending legal challenge from a municipal association, which has indicated that, as I understand it, there should have been a financial sort of backing for municipalities, as there was with LD 2003. So when that was enacted back in 2022, municipalities that enacted ordinances to comply with that law were given $10,000 grants, or up to $10,000, I should say, in order to allow them to comply with that. Because, as many of you know, a lot of much smaller towns have to hire consultants to rewrite their ordinances. The current law did not have any of that sort of financial backing. So there's been a concern from Maine Municipal Association, who I believe is intending to at least get some legal opinion on that. So the guidance that we have been sort of given is to not necessarily enact anything until we understand how that shakes out. But at the same time, Orono, because we have a town council form of government, does not necessarily need to comply with the law until I believe it's June 1, 2026 anyway. And then for all other municipalities that have to go through a whole town meeting process, they have until 2027. So that's the status update there.
Yeah, and we were given directions to proceed on the path we're on, and we can address those changes at a later date.
Yep. We did talk about those changes at our future land use workshop. For those of you who are in attendance, you understand that there was some initial comments there, and some of the comments that we actually received on the growth area map reflect that. So just to sort of start the actual agenda, we had our future land use workshop back at the end of July. We had about 25 to 30 people in attendance. There was a lot of folks present from our existing in-town neighborhoods. So a lot of people from the Sailor development and some of the surrounding areas, a lot of people from Webster side. The posters around the room were from that meeting and reflects the comments of those there. So folks were given 3 dot stickers at each station and asked to sort of rank what their priorities were.
Can you remind me, I'm sorry, I always get confused about like the names of the development
Yeah.
versus like the street.
Oh, yeah.
What's this Sailor?
Sailor is that Mainwood?
Maywood.
Gilbert,
Yeah.
that area, okay,
Perfect, yeah. And then Webster, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think just to sort of debrief, I tried to talk a little bit about what our goals were. We shared the draft vision statement with folks. We shared just a quick snippet of the data that we have found, trying to underscore that really my role in this situation is to both marry the data needs that we found, so the things around school sustainability, correcting the loss of family housing, et cetera, with what the public in general wants to see in their community. And the poster around what kinds of housing would enhance our in-town neighborhoods had a little blurb about that. So people were aware that it's not just, do you want housing? It is, we need housing and where do you want to see it? Although you will see that some folks still said preference for no housing. It was a limited amount of people, but just so you know. The rest of the posters were generally in alignment with the draft future land use plan that I had shared previously. I'm making some minor changes to the rural area section just to be a little bit more specific around what folks actually said they want to conserve in that area. But for the most part, the comments that we received align well with the vision for growth and development in the remaining areas.
A lot of public engagement. It was good, Isabel. You spent a half hour after your presentation just fielding questions.
Yes.
They had you jumping. It was good. A lot of good questions.
Yep. Yeah. So that's sort of the debrief at this point. Again, I'm not going to be making huge major changes to the draft that you've already reviewed and we've had now a couple of discussions about. So this sort of underscored that we're on the right track in my mind. Do you want to switch gears to the next item?
Let's do it.
As long as there's no questions, I'll just keep heading through. Okay. So for this evening, what I really need us to focus on is actually reviewing the draft goals and objectives of our updated plan. Now, just before we get into this, I want to preface this a little bit by saying that the future land use section has much more specific goals and visioning related to land use. The remaining chapters, 11 chapters, are included in the implementation matrix that I've provided here. At this point, I have not yet shared with you the specific action steps. I want to make sure that we're in general agreement on the priority goals and objectives before I share those with you. Although I will say that I have already shared them with like key staff and the folks that will be tasked with working on them ultimately. And there's general comfort from the town to move forward whenever you all are ready. So what I'm really looking for tonight is feedback on the draft goals and objectives. As you'll see, I significantly scaled back the number of goals and objectives that we have. I unfortunately say that, but was not really able to scale back the action steps. We probably will still end up having a lot of work to do, but it'll come in the form of some major ordinance overhauls to align with the goals.
Can you just remind folks on our tentative schedule too, what your hope is?
Yeah, so you're seeing item C up here, which is to set a date to review the formatted draft. Tonight's conversation is sort of a choose your own adventure. I have that meeting set aside if we need another meeting to have conversations. If you're generally comfortable with the goals and objectives as I've presented them, what I would propose doing is talking about actions over email, getting some initial feedback there, mostly because The actions are sort of more subject to change over the 10 to 12-year life of this plan, but we need some really good, solid backing for the goals and objectives. So if we need more conversation, I've set aside a meeting. If we don't need more conversation, we can chat over email about the action steps. And we would meet again in early September to actually review the full draft of the comprehensive plan fully formatted. Because by this point, except for the action steps, you've now seen every section of the plan and provided feedback throughout the phases. So that's where we are. I guess there's not too many goals and objectives, so I'm sort of happy to either start a conversation or just start to field some comments and questions, whatever is preferred.
You want to step down through them or just bounce around?
Let's go through them. And I do just want to know, okay, so yes, perfect. So this, again, just to reiterate, is sort of the framework of the plan. We started a lot with community values. We heard that through the survey, through our initial visioning events back in October and November of last year. We then started to get into a higher level vision statement that was in about January. The goals and objectives that you're seeing sort of are broad aspirational statements that help make that vision a reality. They build upon the future land use draft that you've seen, which is a pretty core component of the comprehensive plan, but there are 11 other chapters that we have to address by state statute as well. And then the action steps are the specific steps that the town and its partners will take to implement the plan. That includes nonprofit partners and the university as sort of project assists on those actions. But we really need to agree on goals and objectives before we present those actions. So I separated these by topic in the matrix that I sent you. And then anything that is a state required goal or objective based on the state's requirements for comprehensive plans is included here in bold. So anything that is not bold is a local thing that we can have as much conversation about as you want. State goals and objectives are fairly immovable. You have to include them or else they don't find your plan consistent. So
You have, just right off the bat, if we just start on the top goal, population demographics, goal is fine. The objective, just looking at 1.1, at the end of that first sentence, it seemed a little out of place to me. So if Orono is a pinnacle of diversity and friendly neighborhoods, if you read through that, and the last part of that sentence says, improve Orono as a university town that appeals to students, both for the time they are attending UMaine and for their whole lives after graduation. I just wondered whether that was appropriate there. It just seemed a little out of place to me if we're trying to.
Seems pretty heavily focused on diversity to me. It's diversity 100%. Yes. And I would strive to. It's like strive to do anything, right?
So, that part of the sentence, it just seemed to make a little bit more sense in the next goal. To me, it just talks about a diverse, multi-generational community, enables older adults. So either way, I just wondered whether that was appropriate or applicable to that one particular goal. Just a thought.
yeah, I think that's a good thought. I just want to give some context on this one. We went through the whole process of going through and auditing our 2015 plans, goals, and objectives. The second half of that sentence around sort of retaining students into the future and being a good place for young professionals is directly coming from that audit that folks said that they wanted to save as a important item.
I don't mind saving it. It just,
Okay.
I wasn't sure how it fit with pinnacle of diversity and friendly neighborhoods. That just didn't seem to be.
Okay, so separate it out is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, or perhaps drop it down to the next goal.
Pinnacle seems like kind of a strong word. It was something that I noticed about it, like is an example of diversity and friendly neighborhoods or a model for, or something. The pinnacle would be not
Really striving.
what we.
I better put strive back in then.
Yeah.
Yeah, striving to be. And I don't know why, like, if these are like tight goals, they both are talking about diversity and diverse. And but we don't really talk, they're not, it's not part of the object. It feels repetitive, but then we also don't talk about them in the about diversity and the objectives. So it seems weird. Like maybe remove it from the second one.
What is the difference of the two? Is that in your mind?
Yeah, I think the second goal, to Laura's point, is really more about being a multi-generational community and maybe less of a diverse community. Because it's really about ensuring housing options throughout the lifespan, and sort of reiterating that as a goal, as a priority for the community. So I'm comfortable removing and just saying Orono is a multi-generational community,
Mhm.
and then separating out the objectives in one, and then yeah, I guess pinnacle would really be a strive for where we are right now, but what are folks feeling?
I would change it. I feel like when you take things too far, they lose, like, you start to lose reality, but that's just me.
I support you, Indiana.
Okay. I liked model 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just soften.
Any other specific comments on those first two? As you'll see, population and demographics from the state does not have any specific required goals, so these are really our local undertakings here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just where is the diversity in the objective? Like friendly, positive neighbor behaviors. I mean, that's kind of like what are needs, like where are we getting diverse people in these objectives? And maybe they're in the action steps, but like Laura said, I don't see them in the objectives.
This feels like an odd question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. When you think of diverse people, what are you thinking of?
Economic, racial, ability, age. Those are, I guess, I don't know, religion, just that everybody doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
That's to me what diversity is.
So
It's like welcoming, maybe, welcoming. We do have inclusive, so that.
yeah, I think what this is really getting at is just allowing all people, the objective, at least 1.2, is allowing all people to live here, feel safe here, be connected to their community. So I think that's what I was trying to get at, but if the language feels too strong, I'm happy to discuss.
Well, I like that language more than, all people, that kind of language feels like definitive to me that we're talking about all people where inclusive, I think it's softer in how you wrote it.
Yeah. So Orono is a model for friendly neighborhoods for all people. Any other specific comments on the population, or do you want to move on? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. So the next goal is historic and archaeological resources in the community are preserved. This is a state goal. It's their language. And we have the identified significant historic and archaeological resources identified in that chapter. So the objective is specifically related to that and is against a state requirement. And then the other what's the word I'm looking for? Potential issue that we identified in the chapter is that we don't necessarily have a great inventory for regulating historic and archaeological resources. We have some of the same things that the state has required, but we have not ever done like a comprehensive inventory of what is important to Orono residents in terms of historic resources. And that is important because when we regulate those resources, we want to make sure that they are captured somewhere.
This has come up before planning board. One of our projects, that subdivision down on Penobscot Street down there, I believe. They were asking about current, if you remember, Judd. They wanted a more current assessment of some of the resources. So that perhaps, I think it was rather dated the last time that was done.
Yeah.
So that's captured in.
When you say resources,
Well. I'm not sure if resources is correct, just,
it's kind of hard to hear.
yeah, just archaeological surveys.
So
just
it's like
kinda-
Indian artifacts.
Yeah, Indian artifacts, but it's been a while, so that's captured in that second. I remember that coming up at planning board.
So the
Yeah.
state defines resources as buildings, sites, and like items or artifacts. Yeah, so kind of all three. And that's I tried to use that same language because that's what they
Okay,
use.
yeah, I just.
Yeah.
And does this like imply the Wabanaki people and Wabanaki land and?
Yeah, because that was one of the ones that we identified as potentially missing from our inventory of historic resources in the
We don't
chapter
wanna
itself.
say that in here, is there a reason why we wouldn't say that? Not just like it is.
No, I think it's sort of cross-referencing the chapter itself, but if you want to get more specific, I think the secondary 2.2 objective is the place to do that.
I mean, I think, and inclusive of the Wabanaki people, like, I think sometimes if we don't have it explicitly said, that gets forgotten in the process. But I would think as Orono, we would want to be I mean, that's what I think of when I think of artifacts, really. Or artificial resources, yeah.
And not to jump ahead, but I think that same inclusive comment is relevant to 2.3 as well.
Jeff, do you want to pull your table in so you can hear better? We're kind of spread apart.
Okay, place, you wanna trade places? Then I can complain about not complain. I can.
Okay.
I'll move if it continues.
Okay. Any other comments on historic and archaeological? Okay, I'm gonna keep pushing through, but we can come back to anything. So now getting into housing, obviously this was one of our big priorities in our vision statement, so I do have a number of objectives here. The other thing that we need to be aware of, though, is that for this one specifically, the state has a number of actions that we need to undertake, sort of related to all of these objectives. And I think we will need to align our actions with state law, which is reflected in the draft actions that I have created so far as well. So
Isabel, overall, how do we know what's priority and what's not amongst these?
So what I try to do in comp plans is to have all of the priority goals outlined right in the vision statement. So to go back to the vision statement, we have that like bulleted list, and I took the language almost directly from those.
Yeah, I went back to that and you do match it up pretty well.
I did do a great job identifying it, but
Comment on that, the only one that isn't state required. So housing in the community is safe and secure, and I read that. Ensure that existing housing units in Orono meet safety standards. I guess when I'm looking at the goal, I wondered what town obligations were for that safety and security, like public safety, public works responsibilities in that. So if you, and I know that comes up later.
yeah,
I
the
just wondered
housing,
if that needed to be more broad, other
That-
than
yeah.
looking at code.
I'll be honest with you, it frustrates me that the state has this as a goal, and then in this case, they don't provide me with any action steps that they want us to take formally.
Yeah.
So 3.5 is sort of related back to some of our life safety inspections that we were doing in the past. We don't currently have the capacity to do that anymore with our existing staffing levels, so if this is a priority of the state, and if this is a priority of the town, we would need to increase our staffing levels to be able to actually do the life safety inspections that we were doing previously. And by life safety, I mean like when you're registering, for example, an apartment for rent. Occasionally, I mean, in some instances, the code enforcement officer has been into that apartment since it was built 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so other communities have, especially after the fire that was in Portland, this would have been in 2017. There's a big fire in Portland. A lot of the code enforcement officers and life safety inspectors, fire departments started inspecting all apartments on a regular basis. We do not currently do that in Orono, and I think that's probably something we should be doing.
I couldn't tell without
What do you
context.
consider regular?
So I personally, from past experience in other communities, would consider regular about every 3 years.
Or you don't think Orono does that?
We used to do it.
We used to do it, we don't have the capacity to do that anymore. They haven't been doing that in a number of years.
I know some of my buildings get looked at annually.
Yeah, we used to do anything more than a duplex we would do.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to do it on a regular basis anymore, from my understanding.
You know, without context to know what the state requirement is and that goal, it just seemed like it would be more broad than just focusing on housing units, but
And housing units, does that mean apartments or
All housing units, in fact, yeah.
single family housing too?
That would be the ideal situation. I mean, so in other communities, that is what they do, is all housing gets inspected on a annual 3-year, 5-year basis.
Even individual houses.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be a project.
Yeah.
That's,
Yes, that live in.
I mean, owner operated, like owner occupied, I mean, like that.
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Good activity for people.
Yeah. So we
Because
don't have to
being
go.
as familiar with codes as I am on rails and balcony and stuff like that, I can drive down the road at 35 miles an hour and show you violations.
Yeah.
In single family houses.
Yeah.
That they would never allow in my apartment buildings.
So are we saying that we're gonna remove this or
Well, I guess that's my next question is,
there's no budget to do
You-
it?
well, yes,
don't you have to address?
I guess that's sort of what I'm asking is this a priority for the community? Is like multifamily units a priority for the community? Is short-term rental inspections a priority for the community? And if so, how do I put this in a different way? We need to add capacity and put our money into that, yeah.
If the goal is in bold, which it is,
Yep.
you said the state is requiring us to have it there?
The state requires the goal and they give me no actions related to it.
Oh, so we could just
3.5.
delete the objective?
You theoretically could, yeah,
Could we address it another way? Like I'm saying, it doesn't come up in the town services one on the last page, but to me, when I look at that, I just see safety and security, that the town's obligation to, you know, provide public safety services and public works services, that lighting, those kinds of things, but
Yeah, that's
I
my
was just
question.
saying, like, education of it to, like.
Or assess.
that you know all the codes, but people don't know what they don't know, you know,
But
and
isn't it specifically addressing codes? Because what's the definition of safe and secure? That could just mean safe and secure could mean the other committee we've got going about ordinances and
right, that's what I was thinking, it's
the
broader.
police is secure and you know what I mean? Like, you know,
Alright,
it doesn't
I'm just saying,
necessarily
it's not
mean.
a bad,
codes.
I guess to me, it's not, I'm not, why wouldn't we want to avoid you know, a huge fire in an apartment complex or,
I think historically, the town's always responded or encouraged renters who have problems with the safety of the unit that they're in to come to the town, file a complaint about it. Then the town would respond to that complaint. But I don't think we've ever had a policy of inspecting on any
Single
kind of
family dwellings.
Oh, yes.
basis.
Maybe a
Yeah.
hotline, maybe.
I
we
think
have
that,
the
I think
hotline
that
for it.
they, I mean, I feel like they inspected, they definitely inspected like
They inspected
Small
multi-unit
town,
here
then-
for many years. I met the fire marshal many times.
So,
I suspect that now that he's the chief of police, he doesn't have time anymore, right? Isn't there one person in charge of both now?
sure is again a really strong word. And so can we just say assess that housing like meets code safety standards, like when requested or as needed?
Support the community.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we need to have sort of a conversation of a group of like, is that sort of the level of service that we're looking for? Or are we looking for going back to the multi-unit inspection model where we were doing that on a regular basis? I guess that's sort of the question I'm asking, and this is,
Well, it depends on what the definition of safe and secure is. Is it referring to code? Or is it referring to safe and secure communities?
And that's
If
why
it's
it's
not
one
a
of
code, then why would we make ourselves do something like that with no budget and no time and no people?
just to, I don't have the specific definition because the
say
state doesn't
housing.
give us one, so.
We'll say housing in the community.
So I guess that's sort of, yeah, like to your point, that's the question I'm getting at is, are we looking for a higher level of service like perhaps we had previously, or are we generally comfortable with the current level of service?
But what is our
But
public
what is
safety?
the current level of service?
We're not doing the same inspections.
Well, and that's why I'm saying, like, if somebody called and asked, it would seem very reasonable to have the town do that. So that's why you could say assess, like when requested or needed. Like if somebody from the town drove by a place and the fire escape was falling off the building, they might be like, hey, we need to go in and assess this. But it's not the town's job to go in every year and look.
Right, to your point, do we want a proactive response or do we want, to your point, a reactive response? Of course, we will respond to complaints. But is the reactive response appropriate?
What is
I'm
public
fine with
safety?
that.
I mean, I don't, what does public safety say? What's best practice? What's?
I
I'm not
cannot
asking
speak,
that-
yeah,
I'm not
I cannot
speaking
speak for our fire department specifically, although I tend to think that they would agree that the regular proactive inspection is in alignment with best practice. Because that's what other communities that I am more familiar with have been doing for the past almost 10 years after this issue.
So does Orono have less staff than it did 5 or 6 years ago?
More units and more demand for permits and more demand for other things. So it's not less staff. We still have a code enforcement officer, we still have a life safety inspector in the fire department, but we have almost triple the amount of permits that we had even 5 years ago, and significantly more sort of complaint-driven type responses that we have to respond to.
brings us back, that was my thought, the neighborhood committee and the safety aspect. Looking at that angle, so again, wondering whether this needs to be a little broader. For
I mean, or even something
Objectives.
like ordinances to support the safety and security of the
Yep.
town. I mean,
that's just a question, yeah.
are working towards.
I mean, the most common issue with those inspections was people taking the fire alarms down. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And it was the college students taking them down. And then you have to go in there and be like, why'd you take it down? Like,
But I think, I mean,
yeah,
I don't feel like the town should feel like they have to be, like, that we're paying someone to go double check that.
right, because there's some buildings, for example, all the fraternity houses, we do an annual life safety check there. And it's not requested anymore. It used to be done twice annually. Now it's just done because we've made an agreement that we're gonna do it because we think it's a good idea. So, you know, there's some things like that there's just kind of has created a system because we need one. I don't know if it's required in rentals. I mean, do you have to have life safeties in your properties? Annual life safety checks?
We have,
Probably
in
used to.
fact, apparently the lady in my office that takes care of that now hasn't told me they haven't been coming, but I'm hearing now that they aren't doing it anymore. Because they used to be, depending on the size of the apartments, some of them were done annually.
Right, we used to have them annually, now we have them, we used to have them twice annually, now we have them once, but it's essentially upon request.
And that's our current practice from the town as well, just so that we're aware of the current level of service.
But Judge Wright's it's amazing the number of you put a device in there, for CO2 and smoke. And they
They're usually, they're hardwired.
they burn the toast and it goes off, and so they unhook it and
And
There
there
it
was
is.
some life safety, I had a better view of the town, I mean, just from like Toots Falls House, we had to proactively ask the town to engage with us. And they did, and we met all the fireman came over and did a tour, and we have our life safety inspections. I don't know, I'm in the fence of, I would like more done, but, then wait for people to ask, because probably the people that are in compliance ask, but not houses and not,
Yeah.
you know, one-off apartments, but I think there is a size, right? I'm sure that's what the fraternity house is there's a size of people, amount of people living in a place that exponentially increases the risk in fire.
So when I was like very first starting my career, I was sort of I was an intern in the code enforcement office in Bedford. And this was our whole conversation that we were having, and I managed this program, and at that time, we were doing 3+ units. So, for what that's worth.
You know,
So how do we want to?
Saying ensure is unrealistic. Even if you're looking every 3 years, that's not ensuring anything. I feel like that's saying that it is safe, and it's not. Like a fire can happen at any time for lots of different reasons. And
can an action step be that the town engages in a process to develop a practice? I mean, we don't have to decide here, right?
As monitored by the town council.
Yeah, because we're just working on objectives,
Right.
something broader.
So, assess housing units in Orono for compliance with safety standards.
And by
Scale back
you,
to
be organized, so.
it just feels like ensure, feels like you're making like a legal statement that it's safe.
Okay, so we'll drop back down to assess.
Sussy, it still implies a commitment though to get the work.
Maybe like.
As requested or as needed.
Like,
As situations arise.
After the fact, we've identified.
Reactive, not proactive.
what our ask is for there to be some kind of thought process and decision, right? I mean, right, like that is, I mean, that's the objective, is for the town to decide how much they're going to with the, you know.
Even if the decision is our current practice of just, by request. I guess I'm trying to,
Can we dictate something different?
We establish a threshold for.
well, I want to be clear that anything in this comp plan is a recommendation of this committee.
Yep.
The council ultimately has to adopt the comprehensive plan and then can take the recommendations as they.
I like establish,
Some standard or some minimum, yeah.
and if it is by request, people should know that they can request it.
But-
I mean, that could be the standard, you know, if it's.
We have the standards though, those are code. And so we're not gonna establish standards, like those are
What-
written
You
already.
can establish thresholds, because I heard like 3 units or Bedford example, so if there are a minimum
Oh.
that we focus on, something like that. So that you could at least have some progress toward this state mandated goal, but not go all in. So some way to get
Yeah, I mean,
it. Half a check mark.
Plus occupancy, or what are fraternity house occupancies typically?
Up to 68, 70.
Yeah, so, you know,
exit that.
I mean,
Them all up.
minimum 20, 22.
Get them all up and going.
that.
But I mean, actually, if you're talking about codes, all the towns
Everything.
use the same code. They'll use the Boca code.
Yeah.
Right
So-
there.
Those are there. I mean, you can't make them go, the town could make them go away if they want to.
So is that what we want to do? Establish a threshold that we're gonna focus on or not even go that far?
Not hearing anything different, so establish minimum thresholds for regularly reviewing compliance with safety standards. For Orono's housing units.
Is that
Yeah,
reasonable?
let the council decide.
Okay. Nice of you.
I like that.
Nice.
On 3.3.
Mhm.
I'm just curious where it says subsidized regulated senior affordable, as like, is that inclusive of people with disabilities, or can we make that inclusive of people with disabilities?
Yeah, I think,
I know
it's implied, but I think
okay.
to your point, yeah. And I do just wanna note that for that objective specifically, the state only requires us to aim for at least 10% of all new residential development to be affordable. I went a little bit further because the demonstrated needs from our data analysis is that we need senior affordable and workforce housing specifically.
So is it 10% of each?
10% of all new housing units. So if we add 500 new housing units over the next 10 years, 50 of those should be either senior affordable or workforce housing. Yeah.
Is there an action item that's gonna require that anybody who build anything have 10% of their housing be affordable?
We can, there's a bunch of ways that we can address it. Some communities doing inclusionary zoning.
We can dig into it when we get to the action. I don't wanna
Yeah.
sidestep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I think there's different levers that we can pull, and I don't know that inclusionary zoning is what Orono needs right now,
Okay.
for what that's worth.
no development. We- That's gonna die.
We did inclusionary zoning in a town that I worked with, but that was because we had 2 planning board meetings a month. Every agenda, we had 3 new subdivisions, and so inclusionary zoning works well in those environments. Hot development environment does not work as well when we don't have that hot development environment, unfortunately. Or, fortunately.
To keep you busy, Phil.
3 subdivisions in what, 15 years or something?
Pacing ourselves.
Whoops, I'm sorry, I had it open in another screen and I wasn't scrolling down. Any other questions on housing or comments on housing? Moving on to economy. This goal is a state required goal, but I think also aligns well with our vision statement. I've done a couple of objectives that are state required and then also sort of drew from our vision statement for the remaining objectives here. And then 4.7 and 4.8 are from our 2015 audit. Because I understand that there was a lot of conversation about that last time. So.
Is there something in here that would have an action step to address the empty storefronts or a way that we could put an action step if that was the desire of the group?
Yeah, I think 4.8 would be the best place for that. So encouraging tax-based growth, addressing vacant buildings, things like that. I'm pretty sure I already have that in there because I know that was a large conversation that we had.
So that's gonna fill empty storefronts, encouraging tax-based growth? Is that what?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be the place, that would be the natural place for that.
I mean, I
Is
guess
that
like you could
incremental?
do,
Tax brackets, is that what we're talking about? To get businesses come in, you reduce it for the first 2 or 3 years?
Um,
TIF.
Yeah, so the actual action step I have in there is around additional economic development incentives, so credit enhancement agreements through a TIF, yeah. Trying to attract targeted business investment. Filling vacant storefronts. There's nothing in there that is not contributing, that is contributing less to our tax base, I should say.
Are we supposed to be providing, like, where are the action steps? Do we have another meeting to talk about action steps or no?
Mention that early on, just so there's, you talked about relying on other professionals. We're gonna have a crack at that, but you're also gonna engage partners, stakeholders, all land trusts, a
Yeah.
whole bunch of people, but
Yeah,
tonight is really just goals and objectives.
And is enhanced feet on the street like an aesthetic? Is that where aesthetics could come in? Other downtown or?
I think I actually did aesthetics in another section below, yeah. But feet on the street could also be a good place for action items on like vacant storefronts as well.
Yeah, because they had facade improvements. I remember Evan went after.
Yeah.
Those grants a while back.
Yep.
And addressing prolonged vacant lots that, I mean, that, I'm just, I love a conversation somewhere about that. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, do you think I guess this is related. Do you think that rises to the level of an objective? Do you want that to be a specific objective?
No, because it could be done within 3, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it could be, done with, but there's just so many open for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I mean, coming up on a decade of open storefront, right?
Yeah.
Being open.
How long is Parks?
It's gotta be 10
Oh,
years.
Gotta be.
But that's,
Walked out of Thai Orchid at lunch.
Vacancy tax.
but that's intentional. I mean, right, isn't that intentional? Like some of it is intentional, some of it's not.
Fine, intentional by who? The owner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how does that help our town?
Doesn't.
But I mean, yeah,
So tax them.
they're taxed already. They're paying
Tax them.
taxes.
There's vacancy taxes that towns use.
Yeah.
Lovers.
You want
But
to
how do you
open,
determine-
if you wanna keep a storefront open, you should be paying more money. I mean, I firmly believe that because it affects the whole town.
Right, but how do we determine that? Like the drugstore is empty.
Yeah, sure, it needs to turn into a-
That's not intentional, I'm sure. But how do we determine that something's intentional?
It is a thing that happens in other towns, so.
Really, there's like do you ask them?
Yeah.
What do you, they say no.
Well,
Is there a
stays open for
plan?
so
Is there
long.
a, like, what are? So it's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Vacancy taxes are a thing.
It's supposed to motivate them to look for somebody to come into their
To
building.
stick
Or lower the price.
Yeah. Or
or
sell it.
sell the property.
Any others on economy? It feels odd to only have one goal there, but I think that sort of captures the heart of what we're really getting at with all of the objectives below, so. Okay. Agriculture and forest, there's only one state required goal. I thought that generally captured the objectives that we're trying to get at. We had a lot of discussion around encouraging the active use of local farms, agricultural lands and forests, but then also supporting urban farming, the economic viability of local agriculture and forestry, things like that. So that's really what all of these are getting at.
It seems to me that we had a farm around Havasu Pines. And then the grant wrote in and they sold up and moved with the idea that Orono doesn't encourage any type of farming. So
Encourage what? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
doesn't encourage farming. They could not have their goats or whatever they had because now they were getting squished out.
Yeah, and that was what so in the chapter on agriculture and forest resources, the Maine Farmland Trust does this sort of quiz about whether or not your town's ordinances are farm friendly. And we are, spoiler alert, very much not farm friendly according to their quiz, because of some of those things that you're talking about. So we require much higher setbacks for like grazing areas or farm type of structures, barns and things like that. We don't have like a right to farm provision around, whether or not somebody can complain about like the smell from a farm that's close to them. right now, if you complain about that, the code enforcement officer would address it with the farm, and that's not super farm friendly, that conversation. We don't allow agriculture, which is both the care and keeping of animals, but also the growing of crops within anywhere except the FNA and LDR zoning districts.
But chickens are allowed.
Chicken, up to 6 chickens are allowed, but no other animals, and
Turkeys, geese?
technically no.
Can I be crazy here?
Yep.
We're not a farming community. We're a
Yeah.
college community.
Yeah,
Is
Dennis,
this-
you mentioned that. There's hardly any land that
No, there's
you.
no farming.
We have a high tax, we're a high tax town. Like, no one's gonna come here and be like, oh, let's buy, 500 acres or 100 acres and make a farm. Like, it's
We talked about this quite a bit,
crazy.
Yeah,
because you said
We've
there's no
got
land
big
suitable.
captives here. Like, to me, we have
not enough.
the goal and the 2 state ones and call it a day. Now, that might be controversial, but that's,
I would agree with that. I was like, whoa, this is a big focus.
you think it'd be the
And-
most important thing we have going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
and maybe 10 years from
Down
now,
there,
if we
that's
checked
about it.
off.
Yeah,
other
That was,
things.
Ashley was a big proponent of that, so just the small scale things, just to allow people to grow produce, because she
I mean,
talked
that
about
would be
that.
appropriate to keep the urban farming,
I mean, I love the idea of it. I just don't know, like,
how
we're
much
not gonna.
energy and
It was much smaller scale, I think, our conversation, that's where we ended up.
Like, am I getting a property tax discount if I have a
Yeah.
farm?
even 5.4 could cover that too, if you wanted as an
The
act.
sense behind this originally, or has been for a long time, is that to preserve the opportunity for Orono residents to engage in the productive use of the land.
Right.
That was to preserve that opportunity, not that we're gonna have a dairy farm or we're gonna raise 100 hogs or anything like that. But if somebody wanted to raise 100 laying hens or something, that there would be an opportunity in the community for them to do that. And that's what the whole premise behind this section is about.
So 5.1 is encouraging, so that's, or, I agree, I would take them out.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to see this just pushed out, because I think that is an important
But there's 2,
thing.
like I said, the two required ones, would that suffice? Like, that is what recommended, and
So-
5.1, 5.2, 5.5, and 5.6.
Yeah,
It's
but
literally
I
a-
mean, we can encourage the active use of forests, not necessarily local farms and agricultural lands, so there's pieces of that might still be relevant.
Maybe develop the idea more of productive and consumptive uses of a piece of property.
Part of
Yeah,
this
if you
gets,
have a woodlot, it's a productive use of the land. That's not a
Right.
consumptive use of the land.
part of this is about prioritization too, like to me, the economic climate is way more important than this when you are like, oh, both of these has 6 objectives.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it for me, like, I don't think encouraging the active use of local farms is a good prioritization right now as compared to like some economic and housing issues that we legitimately have in our community.
But it is forestry too, which
Yeah.
is.
But if we could pare it back and perhaps combine some of the objectives and,
Focus more on what we have versus something that we don't have.
because land trust, you have forestry plans, forest management plans for all your big tracts. A lot of people will do that, so.
But do we want forestry in Orono? If my land is in tree growth, I'm paying less taxes, and we have a money problem. I don't want a bunch of tree growth land in Orono. A land trust is public use property, makes sense, the
Yep.
public's using it. But just as a taxpayer, I don't want people buying big tracts of land and turning it into tree growth.
Good points.
Maybe that's me being selfish, but
But
if
when we hear our schools aren't sustainable, like, we've gotta be
you
reasonable.
can't have it all.
Yeah.
You can't have it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I think we can scale this back to just the state requirements and kind of do the bare bones there is what I'm hearing. Okay. So I don't know why these are color coded differently. I think in my head it made sense, but natural and water resources, green is natural, blue is water. I just sort of did the state requirements here. There's a number of action steps related to all of these that I think are important, and I don't want to minimize these items, but I think a lot of it is addressed in future land use and in the forthcoming action steps, so.
Just the only thing that jumped out at me, what I do, 7.2, minimize pollution discharges to the upgrade of existing public sewer systems and wastewater. As we know, stormwater system upgrades, so sanitary and stormwater. And that falls into the resiliency conversations that we've had. Because our system is gonna be undersized for the types of rain events we get. Other comments on any of those?
Is the arts and cultures, oh, sorry, am I jumping ahead? Maybe.
No, I think we're good to move on, hearing nothing else.
I guess I would put that under economic development instead of recreation, but maybe that's where it belongs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense with the whole like feet on the street and public arts in general. That aligns well with that. I'm fine to move that. I just want to note on recreation, so one of the major action steps here, I know this isn't obvious from this, but we really need to do like a pretty good outdoor recreation, trail connectivity, sidewalk and trail interconnectivity type of plan, and that's pretty much the major action step here. After conversations with our Parks and Recreation Director, there's just a lot of areas where we need sort of a trail management plan and a prioritization of connecting those things. So that's the biggest action step, and then the other things are sort of all related to that step. But that's like a secondary plan of the comp plan. We don't have all that data right now, so.
We talked a little bit about this when we talked about recreation, and I don't know if it's too far gone now or what, but this is a great place to say, work with the university in collaboration on their outdoor recreation, outdoor education programs and services. I mean, there's an academic program as well as a recreational program, and the town already does collaborate in a lot of ways with that.
Lauren Jacobs is doing a lot of work.
And do you want to see that as an objective rather than just a specific action step?
I mean, I think it should be in there. I don't care whether it's an action step or an objective.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to just, again, talk about the collaboration because it's already happening and just, kind of highlight that.
Good point.
I think it merits being mentioned as an objective because it's an objective overall to improve the collaboration. Not just like, oh, let's hold one meeting, kind of as an action step.
Anything else on recreation? Okay, hearing nothing. Transportation. Again, here, our previous public works director, we had some conversations before he left, and the biggest thing coming out of transportation is prioritizing maintenance and work on both roads and sidewalks. But then, of course, there are a variety of other both state and local needs around decreasing development sprawl, building in areas where we already have good infrastructure so we don't have to build new transportation infrastructure. So that's what I tried to capture with that land use and development patterns. And then I thought the state's objectives worked well under that goal for 9.1 and 9.2. And I think at our active transportation meeting, we had a lot of conversation about more investment in public transit and active transportation infrastructure. And again, that trails management plan sort of falls into this as well, because I think that's a pretty big piece of our active transportation infrastructure in Orono.
Where would something about developing a public access network for many of the parcels we have that are suitable for housing development, you can't get to them. There's no public way to get to them, so the owners can't develop them.
There's no road frontage, meaning
There's no road
landlocked?
frontage, there's no, so where would a goal or objective like that go? Would that go in here?
I think that makes sense under the first goal, land use and development patterns complement transportation networks. Or actually, transportation infrastructure efficiently accommodates the town's growth and economic development. I think we have areas within the designated growth area, which is on the plan, under the window there. That, to your point, yeah, don't have frontage, so undevelopable right now. Yeah, I think that's a good place to put that objective.
How would that work? Like the town would assist in buying right of ways, like?
Well, sensibly, that's what would have to happen. I mean, that's the way development used to occur. And that's a long time ago. That's the way it used to occur. The town would lay out the network of streets. And then you. So.
I'm gonna domain check.
Yeah.
The other piece is, of course, as you know, the planning board approves these subdivisions with connectivity, like an easement at the end. Some of it's just gonna probably be drawing on some of those and saying, okay, connecting potential developers with those existing subdivisions where a connectivity easement already exists and providing some incentives for building out those roads.
Yeah, which I think we generally have done for all the developments.
Yes.
At, right of ways to nowhere at this point, but still, it's good planning. I thought you were more talking about, I've got this 100-acre parcel and it's landlocked behind this 10-acre parcel. And somehow, can we get into that 10-acre parcel, that 100-acre parcel by the town buying the 10-acre parcel?
Well, the whole thing's exacerbated by the dead end streets. I mean, you can't have you can't do
Right.
residential development.
She was
dead end
being-
street that's longer than.
Down here, yeah.
It was really interesting at
With the
the
highway, there's lots of land there that you cannot develop.
public meeting, there was a lot of comment on keeping our dead end streets.
Dead end streets.
Oh, it's like, we don't want people, because it regulates speed, all kinds of reasons, but several people brought it up during the Q&A when they were making Isabel earn her money.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think for the
Right.
good of the community overall going forward, something has to happen to address that issue, whether several individuals want a dead end street or not.
No, I know, it was just interesting that there was an awful lot of comment on that.
Not guaranteed to live on a dead end street.
Sorry to interrupt. Eric has his hand raised. I don't know. Eric, do you wanna jump in?
Yeah, just for a moment. So one of the things that comes to mind, hopefully you can hear me, there's a lot of like announcements happening. One of the things that comes to mind when we're talking about dead end streets and recreation and transportation is that having talked to landowners, it seems difficult to establish an easement, even when the owner of the land is being generous and trying to offer a parcel of land as used for an easement in order to establish a more permanent and well-maintained trail connection. So something that we could think about in this comp plan is perhaps like, how can we help support the development of easements and create a system that helps streamline that for landowners?
Yeah, I had that as an action step as well, because that's a huge problem in the community in terms of trail connectivity and being able to also publicize where we have trails. Right now, our trails are sort of a combination of easements, but primarily private landowners just allowing access, and in some cases not allowing that access to be published on any maps, which poses a connectivity and a safety issue. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, probably as an action step, but I think that's more than appropriate.
Other comments? Last one.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Back on the transportation, I think I had a lot of conversations with Rob Yerkes before we left doing over the years, but I think we do need to have something more specific about ongoing budgeting for ongoing maintenance.
Yeah.
And maybe that's already here.
I think I have that as an action step because yes, that is his biggest impression on me is budgeting for ongoing maintenance. So I have that as an action step under one of them somewhere. Yeah. Okay, and then the last section, I combined public facilities and fiscal capacity here. Yes, so public facilities and services efficiently accommodate anticipated growth and economic development, and then it's 5 state required objectives.
Just wondering, my thought with that is whether there's any mention of resiliency in here as well.
I know this is something that Gail has brought up in the past around like town owned solar or things like that. I think this is a good place to put those, but want to understand if that's, you know, if that piece is a priority. And maybe I'm getting too specific there, but
Well, just when I think of public facilities and services, we know that a lot of towns are looking at how to plan for the future, again, just making sure that their facilities and services can deal with changing conditions.
Can that be added to the goal, like
That's what I wonder.
growth, economic development, and let's see, such as that?
yeah, so public facilities and services efficiently accommodate anticipated growth and economic development and are resilient into the future, something like that. Resilient to, I mean, we could also explicitly name a changing climate if that's preferred, but
Yeah, just, I don't know what others think, but I just wanted to add something to that, because these are the hand issues that we have to meet.
So climate change, you know, that's kind of a lofty.
You know.
Thanks.
They can crack them.
sure, I can do that. And the other place is the town has adopted Penobscot Climate Action, which was our regional climate action plan, which talks a lot more about sustainability, especially and resiliency, especially at the municipal level. So I think that could be a good opportunity to cross-reference some of those goals.
Good.
Okay, I can do that.
Isabel, at our June meeting, maybe when we were trying to vote on the land use plan, the map or whatever, I thought we were gonna look at that, like we haven't voted on it, right? And were we gonna make change? I thought we had a discussion around like if LD 1829 passes, we need to look at this again or not, or.
Yeah, we haven't had a formal vote on any of the sections, so we can have, I mean, if that's, I'm done with my portion of the meeting, so if that's a conversation you guys wanna have, I would cede that to you.
Wait, we can get out early, or we can talk about land use? Is that really?
What did?
Well, I thought we were supposed to vote, that was in June, I thought we were voting on it. And then it was like, no, we don't want to vote on it because there's a state law that's changing. And then so you sent us a memo and
We wanted
I
public
thought-
input on some of the things, because we weren't prepared to make decisions at the June meeting, so I think that prompted some of the public meeting and then waiting on LD 1829.
Yeah, I don't,
so are we not voting on it? Are we not looking at it again and voting on it?
that's my question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I thought we started this meeting by, we said we were just gonna ignore this new rule and just move, the new law and just move forward.
Right,
And ignore it, and then it'll be dealt with after the comprehensive plan is done.
Well, and I do want to be
So that
clear,
was,
we can't necessarily ignore the new law. We had conversations about it at our public meeting.
oh, we can ignore it.
And to some extent, you know, I think there's some uncertainty up in the air, but regardless, like, to me, I think, so, okay, I guess I'll tell you how I handled this in another community when LD 2003 was passing in the middle of their comp plan. So LD 2003 passed and we had essentially almost wrapped up their planning process. what I had done in that community was, referenced it in the future land use section and then created a one pager of how it impacted the plan. But frankly, in this case, and in my estimation, I am under the impression that we were talking about, you know, lowering minimum lot area requirements anyway, and trying to densify neighborhoods anyway. So I actually don't, I mean, I think the state law goes further than we probably would have, but it's not fully against the vision that we have articulated. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
What would you like? to
Well,
do?
there are, I thought there were some, maybe I missed a meeting, but I thought there were some growth areas that are like, yeah, that are out of town.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
And so I don't know that we wanna say a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, like on outer Route 2. Because like the tax base for development like that out there is not gonna support the services that it's gonna require.
So, public sewer, anyway, public sewer and water ends. Well, it goes out to
It goes-
essentially the municipal boundary, but
Yeah.
and then it ends sort of going up, is it Forest? Yeah, Forest Ave, it sort of ends that way. It currently ends sort of midway on Kelly Road. So in those instances, 5,000 square feet would not be the minimum lot size with the new law. The new law applies to growth areas with public sewer available. In instances where you have a designated growth area, but there's not public sewer available, the minimum lot size is higher.
It's 15,000 square feet though, which is smaller than anything Orono's
That matches with our
prospectively had.
15,000 square feet matches with our current unsewered areas, at least with our in-town neighborhoods. And then the LDR, low density residential, which is further out, is not in the growth area. Yes, much higher. And then there's a piece of Kelly Road that is sort of ripe for development, but the vision for that is that if it were to be developed, we would be needing to bring sewer out there. So.
So I think I'm hearing you say that the new statute actually isn't terribly impactful to our ordinance. Is that, am I?
It's significantly impactful within growth areas on sewer. It's essentially having our density requirements for the medium density residential zones, so our in-town neighborhoods. And then outside of that, I don't want to minimize that it is certainly impactful, but it's not down to a 5,000 square foot minimum lot.
And our only means to moderate this is to, I think where Laura's going is to moderate our growth areas, right? Is to alter our growth area boundaries.
Yeah, to some extent, yep. So I guess that's sort of the direction I'm looking for from.
Did we want to review the future land use plan? So just.
It's a designated growth area and it's a designated growth area.
That is not my understanding.
What feedback did you
For the-
receive from the public meeting? Because I know.
In
that was
terms
one
of one of the specific questions I asked was around growth area boundaries. Are you satisfied with this as a growth area boundary? We got no comments around shrinking growth area boundaries, even with the understanding of the impacts that the new law would have on those areas. We got no comments around shrinking those boundaries. People seemed generally satisfied with the boundaries as presented.
I think the only concern was if 4 units could be added on to an in-town house lot.
Right.
They were concerned about rental apartments, student apartments, right in a close-knit neighborhood.
And to that concern, unfortunate, I would say to them, the unfortunate thing is the state has pretty specific requirements for growth areas, and existing developed neighborhoods that continue to need maintenance of sidewalks and infrastructure have to be included in those growth areas. you know, once we get out to the LDR and the FNA zoning districts, we certainly have a lot more flexibility around what can be included in the growth area because we're not explicitly maintaining a ton of infrastructure out there. But when we remember that 75% of our capital improvement funding needs to go towards growth areas and growth related investment, we would want our existing more densely developed in-town neighborhoods to be in the growth area.
So we can go talk to your state representative. I like that answer. It's a good answer.
I mean, yeah, so with LD 2003, I was in a very similar situation when that was adopted, sort of most of the way through a comprehensive plan process. And what we did was explained the impacts that the law would have, but ultimately the future land use section is a visioning section. And so, if our vision had changed significantly as a result of the law, I would be more concerned. In my estimation, our vision has not changed significantly for any of our areas. We can refine it a little bit based on the public comment, but I don't think our overall vision for those areas has changed, in my estimation, but I am open to conversation.
What are others' thoughts on this? Then Isabel, if you could explain options too, because we're talking about voting on certain aspects of what we've been doing, but how would that process work?
Did you have a question first? Yeah.
On transportation, does the town are they seriously working on a Route 2 change? And is that affecting anything that we've got?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other piece of the whole thing is that we need to fund that project. And so we would want most of Route 2 to be within that corridor so that we could adequately fund that project. Yeah. I'm sorry, most of the Route 2 corridor to be within the growth area so we could adequately fund that project.
So back to, I'm just thinking of process here, because well, I'm not just voting on stuff. I just wondering how we proceed from here.
Yeah, so I guess to specifically answer your question, folks can call for a vote if you want to vote on an aspect of this. I personally have sort of been operating under consensus at each stage of this. You know, I make the edits during the meeting, and then if I'm hearing nothing else, then I'm sort of assuming that there's consensus. If you would feel more comfortable voting on something formally, anyone in this committee can make a motion and somebody needs to second it and we can vote. I don't necessarily feel the need to have a vote if there's general consensus on all chapters presented thus far. And then I'll get to sort of next steps after you hear them.
Yeah, because you remember the structure early on was that we were going to be a little bit more flexible, but by all means, if you want to change stuff and have something a little more formal or recommend specific changes, then not sure if this is the meeting or if there's another opportunity to do that.
I just thought that we had a goal to do that. And so
Yeah.
with the change, I thought our process was we were gonna look back at that. And so it's 15,000 square feet, not the 5 that it's the
Right.
which is tiny compared to 4 acres, which it is now, like when you look at Orono West, or I don't know how those names were chosen, but I'm fine. We can wrap it up.
And I want to be clear, to at least respond to the Orono West piece. The anticipation is that is we had some extensive conversation about this being sort of a mixed use neighborhood a la Dunstan Crossing in Scarborough. We looked at a variety of photos of this nice mixed use walkable neighborhood and had some conversations about that, anticipating that it would be a much smaller minimum lot area requirement than what we currently have out there, and anticipating that we would be likely either working with a developer to bring infrastructure out there or making some concessions around our current zoning. So I think that was the anticipation this whole time. Yeah.
Thoughts on that? Are we good?
Okay.
All right.
So in terms of next steps, my next step is sort of a question for you. Do we want to have a meeting where we review the action steps in detail? or understanding that I have already worked with key town staff who are mentioned in the plan as sort of being the project leads on action steps, understanding that I'll make the changes that we've discussed this evening. Are you comfortable with like an emailed out for your review and you can email me back comments, or would you prefer to schedule a second meeting in August? I'm asking that it's a second meeting because the anticipation from the original scope of work that the council approved was that we would be having a comprehensive plan available for public hearing in October and council review and vote in November. In order to have a public hearing in October, we need to post the plan for 30 days in advance. So that's September. So we're running out of time, and that means, I mean, I would prefer to stay within the schedule that I anticipated, but if there's like major issues or changes that need to be made, happy to have a conversation about pushing that off. But that's where we are now.
Could you provide a little context on making something an action item? What are the consequences of a specific thing being an action item in terms of how the state looks at Orono and progress on accomplishing the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so under the current chapter 208, which are the state rules for how comprehensive plans are deemed consistent with the Growth Management Act, you have to have certain actions that the state requires. We have also, in this case, added a number of additional actions to align with our own priorities. The state is not going to be knocking on our door asking if we have accomplished the actions. The actions serve ultimately as recommendations of the plan. As an aside, this is my continued frustration with the state's comprehensive plan process, but another conversation. So the action steps serve as recommendations or a guidebook of how to accomplish the goals and objectives that we discussed this evening. That being said, I don't have a big enough ego to think that I have adequately captured every possible way that we could accomplish a goal. The action steps are meant to be specific and measurable, attainable steps, but don't have to be followed in exactly the way as written, while the goals and objectives should ultimately be met regardless of that. So action steps are recommendations.
So for us to weigh in your developed action steps, how much time would we be given? When would you give us a draft? So that if we did it by email, how much time do we have?
I could give you a draft by end of day on Friday because I've already worked with the key town staff and nonprofits on this. And then I would be needing something by calendar here, by most likely August 22nd. So that's about 2 weeks from now.
We do both. I mean, I saw on your schedule that you had a tentative August 27th.
Right.
Could you put the draft out? We reply to it if everyone's good or there's no major considerations. Then even though the meeting's scheduled for August 27th, we can cancel it. And if it comes back and there's a bunch of things that we should probably talk about, then we have the meeting.
What's the reason?
I turn into a pumpkin on September 1st, so I want the stuff.
Is that okay with folks?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that if we go just email, whether that's gonna satisfy everybody, or
It depends on
if you review it thoroughly.
Yeah.
Comes back with a thumbs up,
Yeah,
then
it
we're
depends on the
done.
actions.
But if not, if there's a bunch of things to talk about, then let's go talk about them.
Yep.
Thoughts on that? We okay with that?
I'm good with that. I'm just looking at August 27th.
Yeah, what's the tentative date of the meeting?
That would be a Wednesday, the 27th.
August 27th.
And just so you're aware, we would then be meeting essentially the following week for a regularly scheduled meeting time as well. I'm fine with that, as long as other folks understand that that's
In that next meeting in September, when,
September 3rd.
correct? And what are we doing at that meeting?
And that meeting is where I'm specifically looking for a vote to make this public. We need to make this public so that we can start having some final plan conversations and schedule a public.
The 27th.
Yeah, could that be achieved at the 27th meeting?
Bang, bang. I like how you're thinking.
Or the 27th, go to the 2nd.
Would we have
Yeah.
enough time though? So I don't think we'd have enough time to discuss action
How many
items and then vote.
we're talking?
About 150.
I can't imagine we're gonna not.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have enough time to discuss, modify, and then vote.
That's where my concern comes in, is I wanna make sure that I'm adequately able to address any comments that come up.
That would be tough. Good thought. That's meetings. What would people like to do? Stick with a tentative,
Yeah, nothing was considered.
suggestion, get us the info as soon as you can, and then everybody please, review it thoroughly and provide comment. And maybe we won't have a 22nd or 27th meeting.
And I do want to note that, just to reiterate, the action steps are recommendations. If 9 years from now, somebody looks at the action steps and says, what were they thinking? That is not the action that I would take to accomplish this objective. That is totally within the realm of possibility. So they're a little bit more subject to change more than anything else in the plan, just so everyone knows. Okay, I'm good with that.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.